Hello, everybody. Once again, I'm Lehman Crafton Jr., aka Zorval Chan Less Than Guru, and Mars Video Cat is already in here because he kind of knew I was getting ready to do a video. Decided to already jump in my lap before anything started. So today is Torg Tuesdays, and I wanted to talk about gear and acquisition because this is a topic that came up regularly and recently, and it's something that is a little different than say D&D or Pathfinder or games like that. It's not totally unique, I think, because other more narrative games systems tend to use it, but it is something that I thought was worthy of talking about, and I might expand this in a future video talking about lots of different ways that you as a group might do gear. But today we want to focus on Torg, Eternity, and perhaps even Old Torg and my thoughts about that. So Old Torg, so I'll go ahead now. I'll add Old Torg to it. It just came to my mind. Do this. So in Old Torg, players kept track of money. They even had conversion systems because it was on a world scale, the Earth, and different realms and different countries in the world had different currency value. So you might have like $100 and say 1,000 rubles and some British pounds, and then you started going into realms and you'd have Nile royals and things like that. So there was a currency converter that you could go through and things like that. But one of the things that I thought was very interesting was and I believe this was in the book, but do correct me if I'm wrong because I haven't gone to that shelf there and picked up the book to verify it. But the way I always played it was with ammunition and things like that, since Torg is cinematic um, and kind of wants to be like movies and TV series and kind of present that feel to it, that counting ammo isn't necessarily important. What is important is when you're down to your last bullet or when your magazine to your rifle is expended and things like that. And that was good things to happen for setbacks. So when a setback would occur on a card and the game master is divvying out, how each people are going setback and the people with cyberware and original Torg, whether it was Tharkold or cyber papacy, is like, okay, you guys roll for your cyber psychosis. Okay, this happens to you. This happens to you. Okay, person with the machine gun, your clip ran out, your magazine. So hopefully they would have bought additional magazines, and that's when things like that were brought into play. But otherwise, any equipment the characters actually bought with the money, and depending on where they were, it could cost different amounts, and that's where the currency conversion took place. And like a lot of game masters and DMs for D&D, you can have that currency exchange kind of take a piece off, because if you've ever done any traveling and you go to convert your currency, they're going to take a percentage of that off. And in role playing games, it's not only realistic, but it also can help balance that if the players got a ton of money, or at least then they start looking at things differently. And Torg Eternity, so we're going to switch from original Torg to Torg Eternity, is interesting to me in the fact that it's flipped completely. And what I mean by that is your characters start off with, under normal circumstances, $1,000 worth of stuff that they can buy. And if you're wealthy, and why I said normal circumstances, if you're wealthy, meaning you have the wealthy perk, then you get a starting of 10,000 instead of 1,000. And it's not just that though. The wealthy perk actually, I believe it's favored for any requisition checks you have when you're trying to purchase things. So that's an additional benefit. And the question has arisen is, is that 1,000 only at the beginning, or is it at each adventure? And for me, it's at the beginning. That is what your current thing is. You get the 1,000. Now, I'm always one that if something is vital to a character and it's not close to the 10,000, it's not close to the 5,000, but if it's like maybe one thing, they're like, I only want this one thing, then as a game master, I might work with the player on that. And why I bring this up is it was brought up, and I think I might have even mentioned this in a different video, is that when I was making the alchemist archetype for Aurorish, there was a mechanical arm, and the mechanical arm is 2,000. Well, it's 2,000. It's not 1,000, and it doesn't have very much of a mechanical benefit. One thing it does is if you don't want to take a wound, you can have it hurt your arm, but then basically the arm's damaged. If it takes another wound, then it's destroyed completely, and you have to buy a completely new one. So it's one of those things that has a little advantage, but I don't see it as that much, because if it gets hit and takes that wound, you have to pay 1,000 to repair it. It's not like a living flesh arm that it takes a wound and your healer comes and heals it. No, you have to pay the money for it. So yes, you get an extra wound, but that benefit is offset of actually having to pay money for it. And Torg Eternity is not a game where the party goes out and they loot bodies and stuff like that. And that's one of the things that they were trying to avoid in their requisition kind of template on how you gain new gear. And so basically, I just wanted to say with the starting gear, my personal belief is it is the 1,000 you get at the beginning. You can work with your game master over something to maybe alter that a little bit. I would err on the keep it more towards the 1,000 and not the 10,000, because that is when you start getting into wealthy, taking away from that perk if you do that. But if you want to give everybody free wealthy, then give everybody free wealthy. It's your game. That would be fine as well. But for me, it's what you start with, not what's at the start of every adventure. So another thing I wanted to say is then how do you acquire new things? How do you get money? Torg Eternity is not one to really. Everything in the book has a money value, but they don't really talk about the Delphi Council. How much does it pay? How much does it do this for various missions? None of the missions we write. It's not like a D&D or any type of other role-playing game, like even Shadowrun, or it's like, here's a mission, we'll pay you this much money on successfully doing it. Maybe you get half up front or a quarter up front, and the rest when you come back, or whatever you've haggled with the person presenting this job, basically. But the Delphi Council doesn't have anything like that. What Torg Eternity has is between each act, you can roll your persuasion against the target value number, which is associated with the cash value of that item. And if you succeed, then you are able to acquire that item. Now, the way that the game is set up is at the end of the mission, if you have not used that item, then you give that item back to the Delphi Council. They are able to then give it to somebody else or use the next adventure, depending. But they're going to reuse that. That was something that you asked for, but you don't get to keep. It's kind of on a loan if you don't use it. And then something that like Organized Play uses also is if you want to keep it, if you don't use it, or if it's something that's not expendable, like say a sword or something, and you want to keep it at the end, you make a streetwise check against that value to see if it's available, and then if it is available, then you use your own money. And what the Organized Play does is normally each of their acts is $250 that you get, and then you can save it up until you can purchase it, and that's outright purchasing it. And they have also rules like if it's in your home cosm and it's under this value, you don't have to worry about finding it and things like that, but I won't get into details. It's just showing that there's a different way. Now, me personally, what I do is I have different skills work in different realms, because I see things that persuasion might not always work. So as an example, when my characters are in Tharcold, and I usually do it what the act is before and the act is after. Organized Play does it what act you're going to, and Core Earth, but I do it what's before and after. So If you're leaving cyber papacy and you're going to Tharkold, then you can choose something from cyber papacy or from Tharkold, that type of thing. But like cyber papacy, I view that anything that would be on the normal acquisition would be normal stuff, but when you start getting into things that would be more illegal or contraband, like weapons and stuff, then you have to use Streetwise to find it. And in my personal game, I don't have a Delphi Council. So everything that they get, it's not just a rental, it's not just a loaner, it is what they get, what they're able to succeed with their role, they own. And I use that also as kind of a more stress of why we don't loot bodies just, if we kill 15 Nile shock troopers, we don't loot all 15 weapons. Now, if somebody wants to swap out a weapon because that weapon's better than me, or I have a pistol and I would like to have a rifle that's long range, that's allowable. But I don't have the characters going, we have to get all these guns so that we can take back and sell. Now, again, in a different video, not related to Torg, I might explain why that's not always a good case. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, but we're talking about Torg. So I want to keep my Torg games from that minute record keeping, because you don't really see that in TV shows and movies where the heroes are there and they're looting all this stuff, putting it in the truck so that they can haul off to the weapon merchant down the street, or the next city over or whatever, sell it and make money. That's not the point. So I allow those things, but in cyber papacy, like normal stuff, then yes, you use your persuasion. But if you want that contraband type stuff, then you're going to have to do your streetwise. And I don't do the monetary. I don't do the like 250 per mission, because there is no Delphi Council. The characters are in a group and they're doing this because they want to save the world, not because they're part of the other organization. Not to say people in the Delphi Council don't want to save the world. It's just there's not that structure in my world, my Cogniverse. So basically, then if say they're in Tharkold, then I use intimidation, because to me, you're not going to. Tharkold's going to be harder to persuade somebody, but you can't intimidate. So you do the same thing, intimidate. And when you're in Isle, is sort of like cyber papacy, normal things you would purchase, but things kind of under, contrabandy is streetwise. In Living Land, I use survival because I don't really see them doing a lot more than bartering. So it's not just persuasion. It might be I'll teach you the skill on how to make this stone axe or this dugout canoe or something like that. And so I use survival for that, as you're learning how to do this. That to me makes sense in like Living Land. So in different realms, I have different things. The majority of them are persuasion or streetwise, but I don't do the persuasion for the loan streetwise to buy. I use more persuasion is the normal items there, and the streetwise is finding and acquiring that underground black market, contraband legal thing, depending on what it would be in those realms. So basically, that's what I wanted to say with the acquisition for Torg Eternity. Kind of goes away from the old Torg of you're keeping track of all your monies from all your different realms, and you don't worry about ammunition because ammunition isn't cinematic until you run out, or you're close to running out, or your weapon jams, or you're down to your last bullet, or your last magazine has expended its last cartridge. So Torg Eternity, as I said, it flips that. So you don't have to worry so much about the nitty gritty, how much money I have, but you count ammo, which I find hilarious. And I understand the reasoning, or at least my mental reasoning, when I'm like, why do you have to count ammo? That was one of the cool things, in my opinion, about original Torg, was in that cinematic thing. And I always presented it as episodic, as a TV series, and that's why my different groups were kind of like the CSI New York and the CSI Miami and CSI Las Vegas. It was kind of like Storm Knight's here, Storm Knight's here, Storm Knight's here, and every once in a while you have guest stars from one show appearing at the other one. When somebody was like, "Hey, I'm off this weekend. Do you mind if I travel with you to St. Louis and play with your other group? Oh, bring your character. You're the special guest star for tonight." That type of things that happen often in TV series that are connected, and now even in movies do that. But I always thought that was interesting in Torg Eternity. When I first read, you count your ammo, and I kind of understand it with bursts, so that people don't just always do long bursts, constantly get a weapon that does long bursts and not have to worry about weapon or ammo for it, or short bursts. But still, it's kind of like, then why not just do it for those and not worry about this other thing? And then I saw that it is for something like the rays, which can be ray guns, Nile Empire Pulp Powers perks, and things like the Monster Hunter, which gets the Bulletsmith. I mean, the Bulletsmith perk that usually is connected with the Monster Hunter of Orosh. Those, they get limited amount of ammo and special ammo, and then the normal just buy it or requisition it ammo. There are special ammos out there. So if you're going to make the person with the ray power count their rays, expenditures, or the Monster Hunter, their special ammo, then that's bought with a perk. So if that is bought with a perk and they have to track it, then your person who's just requisitioning it or picking it up off of a fallen foe, they should count the ammo as well. And I do understand that the perks are limiting that special ammo, but the special ammo doesn't get really limited by the other one. You can buy as many of the smart ammunition that you want, or the all the different things in the book. So that's something that if I was redoing things, which I kind of am in the background, not officially, but for my Paraverse, if I ever update that things, because um, I did the Paraverse as a harken back to the old original Torg in a way. But now, having played Torg Eternity for 3 years, game mastered it for 3 years, doing some writing and designing of it, I do have some ideas that are popping around, and there might be things that I loosen up for a future game, or some things that I kind of uh, tighten up or restrict more. So just basing off that, and hopefully that at some point will see the light of day. But I did want to talk about, so I'll end it pretty soon, around 20 minutes or so, 17 now. But I basically did want to present how gear and acquisitions and things like that work. The last thing I did want to add, because I kind of forgot until now, was normally in Torg, it's supposed to be at the beginning of every act you do requisitions. I don't always do that for the mega adventures, because at some points there's not an appropriate time between acts, and sometimes it might be during scenes or between scenes. Um, Especially if your one act ends at this place, and when you go to this another place, there's no Delphi Council type place to requisition. But then you go here, and then a scene or two later, you stumble upon, say, a Delphi Council safe house or something like that. And so anytime I game with the group, I will say, normally we do it at the beginning of an act, but sometimes it's doesn't logically fit there, so I will move it to the next available between scenes and things like that. So I did want to add that officially it's supposed to be before every act, but my own kind of way that I do it is, if it's just a Delphi Council mission from one of the individual stand by itself missions, then yes, at the start of each one of those is fine. But on the whole mega adventure, sometimes the acts don't lend themselves, between acts don't lend themselves to getting to a place where you can acquire something. So sometimes I have my players wait an act, or I might do it earlier at the beginning of the very last scene if it's appropriate. I kind of figure out where that closest place is that's appropriate, and say, hey, we're doing it now here, because during the act break it doesn't quite make sense. So you can take that and use that if you want. So, well, once again, I am Lehman Crafton Jr., aka Zorvalchan Less Than Guru, and this is another Torg Tuesdays. Catch me tomorrow game mastering Blood on the Blasted Lands with Torganized Play on Roll Hit Die on Twitch. and then a few days later it goes to YouTube. So catch us there. Make comments if you want. And I do again want to thank. I'm up to 27 subscribers, so thank you very much for the subscribers. I am glad that somebody's watching. So once again, until next time, I will catch you later.